Okay, welcome back, dear viewers, to the late but final video on the deep dive of the Walking Dead Universe RPG. Thanks for being patient. Before we begin, however, just wanted to say a couple things. Number one, this is what I do. I play games, I record myself playing those games, and then I talk about those games. I got nothing against the flip through review, but sometimes I find a polished product has some issues and may not be all that fun, and you've just wasted a bunch of money on it. Um, or in contrast, you have like this two, three, $4 PDF from some indie creator, and it looks like garbage, but it is absolutely a blast to play. Um, and I just don't think you get that. You don't get a good enough take from a flip through. So, if this is something that you find interesting, you think is important, and appreciate, whatever, hit like, subscribe, the bell icon, yada yada yada. Second thing, looks like my YouTube channel just broke 500 subscribers. Thank you so very much. Just kind of doing this for fun, for kicks. Um, I've been learning a lot on how to do this sort of thing. And like I said, this year I'm kind of trying to change things up. You're going to see me more often. I might lose some subscribers with that. But anyway, so I just wanted to say thank you. Spread the word if you think what I'm doing here is important. Because again, I this hobby is fun, but it can be expensive. And then finally, yeah, been very busy, and that's why this is late. My wife got tested positive for COVID. She's fine, just really tired. So we didn't go to church today, and so I have time this morning to do this. So let's get started. The final video of the Walking Dead Universe RPG. Let me get this up and rolling here. Okay, so yeah, part three, setting up the campaign. This section's actually really good. It's not perfect, but it's really good. I think it's got some good advice all around that can actually assist you with um, other freely games, and in some sense, that's universal enough to go into other games like D&D and Lamentations, GURPS maybe, Um, but broadly speaking, the Walking Dead campaign is a hex crawl. It doesn't use hexes, it uses squares, but that's essentially what it is. Players are going to have to leave their haven at some point, and it could be for any reason. Um, Again, as I've said in prior videos, the game master has a lot of discretion and a lot of power to sort of drive the narrative. This is a story game after all, or at least on that spectrum that I talked about a video or two ago. It's very much in that category. Whereas the Forbidden Lands RPG from Free League, I think, is kind of in the middle. There's a lot of OSR stuff in that, where it's kind of open and the players can just kind of do whatever they want, and there's all this focus on procedure, but there's still a lot of narrative elements in that. Here, this could have been more OSR, more granular, more focused on procedure. Um, but they stopped, and I think it's because they're trying to emulate the show rather than provide a survival post-apocalyptic zombie horror game, which is unfortunate because I think this could have been really successful if they leaned hard into that. Um, but anyway, so yeah, they're gonna have to leave the haven, and they're gonna have to start going on runs, is what it's called, and that's where um, kind of becomes this like hex crawl type game where they're moving across the map, encountering things in each sector, um, and so on and so forth. This section of the book I do like because it actually shows you how to do it. Alien RPG hints at a kind of sandbox where you can travel to different star systems and generate them randomly, but there's a lot of tables and it's not easy. And I don't think it's conducive to doing it um, in person while you're running your game. This actually kind of helps you set it up pre-game. Um, and I'm thinking about importing some of these ideas um, to an Alien RPG campaign and try it that way. So, um, but yeah, you get a lot of tables and that assist you with this, randomly generating things. I think a lot of what's in this book could have and maybe should have been in some of these other free league games that I've read, like the Forbidden Lands, like Alien RPG, like Vossen. I mean, maybe it's in a few others that I'm not familiar with. But all in all, I do think this section is actually worthwhile. It's really good. So, um, okay, gonna actually talk a little bit more about this. Kind of already mentioned these before and tried, but I think it's worth talking about more because this is the heart of the game. You have issues that are that help describe something problematic about an NPC, a situation, a PC, a building, the environment, and the game master has the authority and the power to just turn that issue into some kind of challenge. And the challenge is basically how you make things happen. And what and there's not just like one challenge per issue. Like an issue could generate a variety of challenges, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Um, but for example, in my game, it started on the 4th of July, and this NPC is a former MMA fighter, and he had some fireworks that he found. And he wants to have a little fun with another NPC, a child that's part of their haven, and the PCs and the NPC are arguing about like, look, this is a bad idea, shooting off fireworks. It's going to attract walkers. Well, they failed their manipulation roll, and the MMA fighter has an issue. He doesn't like being told what to do. He has a problem with authority. So guess what he did? He climbs up on top of the haven. It was a restaurant that they selected, and started shooting off fireworks with the kid. They're having a grand old time, but it attracted some walkers, and then all kinds of stuff happened. It thwarted a plan of theirs to find car parts because their broken down car that they had needed car parts. That in and of itself is an issue, right? So the challenge is, can you find some, right? And then that then in turn turned into, well, we found a Napa auto parts store. What's in it? Oh, there's a pack of wild dogs. That's an issue. How do they overcome that challenge? And then zombies started coming and things went to shit for real quick thanks to the fireworks. Anyway, um, so that is the heart of the game: issues and challenges. The zombies are just sort of tangential in some respects, but they're ever present, right? So um, understanding how these two play with each other is going to be key to having a successful Walking Dead game. And like I think I've mentioned this before, I was very skeptical when I sat down and started playing this with my buddies. I spent the time to build the campaign, but I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if we play once and that's it. We had a lot of fun. They're looking forward to our second game, which will be next week. Finally, it's been delayed, unfortunately, and yeah, we're gonna see what happens. So there's also discussion in this section about endgame, and this is like a narrative concept for when a season of your campaign ends or when the whole campaign should end. It's sort of like either a winning state or a fail state condition that's met. Um, I don't have one in mind because I guess I'm just too old school D&D. You know, I'll if I find a spot where it's like, okay, this actually makes sense to end the game here for now, I'll do it. But I didn't want to be too narrative heavy. That's just a style that I don't like. I've done it in the past. Ugh, you know, it is what it is. But anyway, that's for you story gamer types. Like, you will have like end game idea in mind, and the players will hopefully move towards it. So, okay, going on runs. So this is when they leave the haven, and there is some type of hex crawl like procedure here, but it's very general, very abstract. Like I've said in prior videos, abstraction is like a double-edged sword for this game. It's helpful for developing narrative stuff, but then you're just kind of left going, this doesn't feel game enough, you know, um, at times. So during in this section, it gives you travel speed. So if you're walking, you'll move 1 square a day. Okay. But if you have like a motorcycle or a car, you can move 5 squares. They don't get into speeds. They don't get into mileage per day. It's very basic. I kind of actually like that because I don't think sometimes you can get into the weeds. As much as I appreciate the simulationists out there, sometimes I wonder if you're going too deep into minutia for the sake of simulation, and I don't know if we really need that. If we're just sitting around rolling nerd dice and telling stories to each other, you know. But that's a conversation for another day. When a group of PCs enter into a new sector, they'll make a scout roll. On a success, they know what's there, generally speaking. So if you have something keyed on the map, let's say like a swarm of walkers, they'll see them first, and they'll be able to determine what they want to do. If they fail, the walkers would see them first, right? If you have an interesting location, the PCs are going to encounter it on a success. On a fail, maybe they missed it, because every time you go into a sector, they could be entering at a different location. They do talk about this. Like, these sectors are pretty big. I think like 10 square miles or something like that. So there's a lot that could be in there. Or I'm sorry, kilometers. It's not miles, it's kilometers. Anyway, rations. You got to consume a ration per day, and you get a number of rations equal to the haven's capacity. So if your haven has a capacity of 2, you'll start the game, or I'm sorry, you'll start the run with 2 rations. Okay. You can hunt, take a day to do some hunting. For each success, it'll give you a die roll, which is cool. So like, if you have 1 success and you roll a 1, maybe you only got like a squirrel or something, right? But if you got 2 successes and ended up rolling 7 rations, maybe you bagged a deer. It's kind of a neat way of handling that. You can also do scavenging. And that's done again by a survival roll. A success allows you to roll on the scavenging table, which has got all kinds of stuff on it. Extra successes grant you an additional ration on top of the roll on that chart, which is kind of cool too. I like that. I like the sort of randomness of, we're going to go scavenging, we're going to see what we can find, and then they find something, they're like, I don't know if this is useful now, but maybe it will be useful later, you know. Survival rolls can also be used to figure out where things are. Okay, and this represents the knowledge of pre-apocalyptic times with an educated guess. Okay, so going to the Napa Auto Parts store, my players knew that there was one nearby. And I was just like, it's going to be in the same sector because their restaurant was in this town on our map. So it's not like their run was actually going to be a significant one. But you can't use the survival roll for stuff that's post-apocalyptic. So they won't be able to use them to find NPCs or swarms or things like that nature. That's what the other survival roll is really about when they enter into a sector. A good way to think about that survival roll actually is treat it like a surprise roll. Like, are they going to be surprised by what's there? Do they see him coming before they see the party? So. Okay, here is the campaign prep section, and it's all numbered step by step. Okay, so step 1 is an area map, about 200 kilometers divided in 10-kilometer square sectors. The players will get a copy, and then the GM has a secret map with all the hidden stuff on it. and that's kind of fun. Like I actually picked an area of New York where all my friends, my gaming group kind of live. So there's going to be that pre-apocalyptic knowledge that they can kind of draw on, and plus it's going to be kind of fun to tromp around my backyard in a zombie apocalypse, I think. But then you have to pick your campaign type. Now you're going to do free play. I put free player. Always one typo. Always one. Anyway, versus season play. So the free play, I call it the more OSR type, where it's just a hex crawl and the players are going to just explore and do whatever they want, and you just sort of let it go. Season play is more narrative, where you actually have a plot in line, where a lot of what happens is derived from this plot. Um, some players are comfortable with that, some players are not. Um, so that's going to be up to you. Obviously, though, I mean, if you and your gaming group are sitting down to play The Walking Dead, they should have an understanding that this is going to be more of a narrative-based story game. Uh, yeah, so they better not complain, I guess, because you get what you signed up for, right? So so there's that. I chose free play because that's what I like. Characters and relationships. Here's a lot of narrative stuff for you. This is where you take a look at all the NPCs and PCs and how they're related to each other, and where further issues can be derived. Okay, this is um, where like maybe two NPCs are lovers, right? Maybe one's got a secret crush. Maybe one is a psychopath who's hiding, who's like living the life of Riley because society's collapsed and now he can murder anybody he feels like. You really, this is where you really have to dig in and start to think about issues that are going to turn into challenges, um, specifically with the NPCs and PCs. Um, as from earlier videos, I talk about like anchors. Like the PCs will have an anchor, one of which will be an NPC, someone that they trust to hang out with to reduce stress, things like that. Um, then, oh, and this is also the point where the players, start making their characters, and then you roll and have the players make up their haven. Okay, we talked about that in the prior video, um, but they'll make it, and then they talk about with the game master where to put it on the map where it made sense. So, like my players, they actually knew of a place, a restaurant, in a small town near where I actually went to college, and I actually worked at this restaurant. And they're like, "Yeah, well, we're going to use that as our haven," and it's at the tip of a lake. So there's also some fishing opportunities and things like that. And so that's we just said, okay, this is where it is, um, and then away we went. Of course, I have a feeling they're going to lose their haven next session. All right, so here is an example of the map. This would be the player's map, and this is the one the game gives you for the campaign. Um, it provides in the book along with the example scenario. And as you can see, it's northeast Georgia. You got Atlanta down in the corner there, a couple small towns, larger suburbs, and things like that. Um, and then the Game Master's map has some key locations. It looks like there's 3 swarms and 3 factions, and then a couple other locations that might be places of interest for the party. Um, but this is essentially what you're working with. Okay, um, and as you can see, this very similar to like a hex crawl, right? It practically is a hex crawl. All right, this is kind of a fun part to do, and I think this is actually good to do whether you're playing this game or not. Pick some factions that are actually going to be located on your hex map. These are other people, for purposes of this game, these are other people who are survivors, banded together to help each other out, and could end up becoming villains, allies, who knows? But they all have the same basic characteristics: a name, how many there are, a type, leadership, assets, needs, issues, a haven, important NPCs, and their end game. Like, what are they looking for? So, just to highlight a few of these, so like assets is something that the the faction has an abundance of, whereas needs are things that it's lacking. Okay, and this can easily become an issue for that faction. Um, the faction may have more than just that, though. There may be a power struggle going on inside the faction. They may have some undesirable characteristic, like maybe they're I don't know, a bunch of I want to say xenophobic, but no, maybe they're just racists or something, and they just don't like people of a different color or something. Like maybe there's just something about them, right? Um, I have, as an example, in my game, there is a faction that is their leader is a very demanding and manipulative woman, older woman, very unhealthy. She's obese, and she has a disabled child that she's trying to keep alive. And she's manipulated a lot of children that who are survivors that she's sort of attracted to her place. They all call her Mama, and she sends them out to just get as much medical supplies as possible. She's trying to keep her son alive, and she's using these kids as a way of doing it. So her asset, the assets of this faction, is medical supplies. Their needs, however, are really rooted in defense of their really not very good haven. I've chose it's a bit of a trailer park connected to a dilapidated farm. The trailer park is kind of overstating. It's a series of trailers for like migrant workers, or it was for migrant workers, and they've been using that. So they need defense, but Mama's been very laser focused on keeping her son alive. Um, so that's an example, and that example came from a lot of the random tables this section provides to help you develop factions. These are great if you just want something random, or these tables can assist with your brainstorming and creative process as you try to kind of think through some ideas. Um, this section also gives you two factions as well as examples to kind of like work off of. All right, step 6 for your campaign prep is coming up with some secret issues, one or two, involving the NPCs in the player's haven. Now, they may already have issues that everyone knows about, but there's going to be one or two secret ones that could come up. I'd give you some examples, but in the event that my players watch these videos, I don't want to give anything away. But this again, these secret issues will turn into challenges, which is step 7 here. Here it is. Okay, so here is the meat and potatoes of your campaign prep. You look at all the issues that you have, all right, regardless of where they come from, and then you start to brainstorm challenges. Okay, think of challenges like seeds of a scene that you will present to the players. Um, some of these challenges you may never use. Some might be better than others, right, in just terms of their level of creativity, but you're just going to brainstorm as much as you can. Um, you know, you might have an NPC who's secretly in love with a female or opposite sex or same sex, whatever, secretly in love with another NPC, right? And if that NPC ever has a flirtatious encounter with a PC or another NPC, maybe a challenge would be that guy loses his shit and goes after him or something. Um, maybe you have a haven that's got a leaky roof and everyone knows about it, right? But they do nothing. And so maybe your challenge is if they don't do anything with the leaky roof, there's going to be a roof collapse, and maybe that will cause some injury. Um, I have an NPC who's has a foot that didn't heal properly, so she's got a penalty to her mobility. Um, that's an issue, right? So what's going to happen when walkers come, right? So maybe another NPC takes advantage of her inability to walk fast and run fast, and tries to sacrifice her, right? I can put that down in my challenge list, you know. Other challenges, obviously, where like the vehicles are damaged, you can use that. Um, and then other things that come up based on the NPC factions. Some of the NPCs from Mama's group there. I have one. He's an 18-year-old boy who is questioning her methods, Mama's methods, and he often goes off alone to do hunting. So, an issue and a challenge might be the PCs having to assist him in escaping, or assist him in freeing some of the other children from her psychological manipulative grip. But Mama also has an NPC second who's a teenage girl who is all about Mama. She's just as psychopathic as Mama is, and they're going to have a problem with her. So all these things, and if you're like run D&D games or any role-playing games, this probably sounds kind of familiar, right? I mean, I think this is a thought process that a lot of us game masters go through when coming up with like plot hooks and story hooks and adventure hooks. This is an express way of stating it, and that's one of the reasons why I actually kind of like this step-by-step process that Free League is provided in this game, because it's in some sense it's something that we already do, but it's now kind of like put down in like written form, right? Um, so there it is, like the challenges, and all those challenges are going to be used when you, the game master, feel like incorporating them based on certain things that have happened, prior sessions, that sort of thing, and who the players encounter. That okay. Um, But then, after that's done, you're going to want to work on a random events table. There's one in the book that I recommend you use, so it's less work for you. But you may want to develop your own. These random events can be used to just generate unforeseen challenges, because you're not going to be able to figure it all out, right? So maybe your campaign takes place in Florida. Maybe a hurricane hits. What are the players going to do? You know, um, in my game, in Western New York, it's a lot of heavy snow in the winter. I actually can't wait till the players get to that point, because things are going to get real tough. Um, so, so things like that. But then you're going to have another table for faction encounters. Okay, so you have random events, random encounters, and faction encounters. The faction encounters and random encounters are kind of part of the same table, right? So you'll roll like a d6, and like there's a 33% chance of getting a random encounter, 33% chance of getting an NPC encounter, and a 33% chance of faction encounter. Faction encounters is where you can take your factions and create potential story hooks and adventure hooks um, for your game. It's This encounter table anticipates something more specific than just you bump into Bob's boys. Okay, this is not a you encounter 2d6 orcs and then you go through some sort of encounter procedure to develop the encounter. No, it's you encounter 7 orcs sitting by the fire arguing over the mutton they're eating, and one of them is thinking about defecting to another faction. So it's very specific. This is actually a complaint I have. If you've played the Forbidden Lands, there is a random encounter table in the main book, and another one I think in Blood March, and I think another one in the Frozen North one. I can't remember what that one's called, but and it's all very specific encounters. Um, what do you do if you roll that again? I guess you can re-roll, right? You're like crossing it off and re-roll. I kind of wish there was something more general. This is where I think like old school D&D and those kind of OSR retro clones get it right. Um, I I don't like having to sit there and think of like a full complete plot hook for something that might never happen. Like it just doesn't make any sense to me. But I do think the faction encounter concept is good because you might run into some of Mama's kids, right, as they're scavenging for medical equipment, and who knows what could develop from that. Um, and then the game recommends you pick a few other locations to put on your map, and these are locations of interest that the PCs can explore, interact with. Um, there's some random tables to assist you with that. I I also kind of came up with some that just seemed to make sense. So like there's a mall where there's a dude all by himself living in the mall, and he's just been surviving. But there's so much stuff there, like that's why he's set up shop. So he's a little addle-coved. He's a little weird, a little crazy. Um, I have another one where these two high school kids, madly in love with each other, are like living on a farm, doing the best they can, and who knows what the party's going to do when they stumble upon that farm. Um, okay, and then here's one of my favorite parts. You get to place swarms on the map, and these swarms. This is where the game starts, and every 2 game days you roll on a chart to see where the swarms move. The swarms might bump into a faction, in which case you got to figure out, off camera between sessions what happens. They might move into where the players are, and then the players have to deal with the swarms. I think this adds a really fun, like, creeping death sort of um, element to the game, um, and that if the players know that this is a possibility, it's going to add tension and whatnot to the game. And then you should have a rumor chart that you develop. This is something where if the players bump into a random NPC and they interact with them, the or maybe even a faction NPC, and they get talking. Maybe the NPC divulges some information about the map, and the players can then use that to kind of figure out what to do next. Um, if you've played Keep on the Borderlands, classic D&D module, there is a rumor table there as well. Some of those rumors are true, some of them are not, and this is exactly what the Walking Dead game is doing too. So I think this is this is just really good. I think this entire process for campaign prep, I think, is just all around good and can be used anywhere in any game that you're running. And I would have loved to have seen this in like in the Alien RPG game. I would have loved to see this in some of the other Free League games. So a few other things that I don't think really deserve their own video, but just want to kind of mention. This section does provide some advice on managing the campaign factions between game sessions. Um, you know, again, this is universal. This should be applied in any game that you're running because the factions have a life of their own. They're going to change. Things will change. In my Lamentations of Elemental Evil campaign, things were happening while the players in Hamlet, while the players are off. You know, um, so I think that's good to keep in mind, and I'm really happy to see Free League put that in here. You know, um, the back of the book, the appendix area, has a ton of random tables that are just great. Would have loved to have seen this in Alien RPG too. Um, Everything from like the NPC encounter table, which gives you a bunch of NPCs pretty much fleshed out. Uh, Features for NPCs, like random features, random features for walkers that the player, they might have like a knife sticking out of their head or something, weather tables, random location, so if the players are scavenging or something and you're not sure what's in the sector, you can just, roll on this table. Um, what's in the room when the players are like moving from room to room in some building they're checking out. Really awesome. This is exactly what this game needs for the way it's set up. I think it's great. I absolutely think it's great. Um, Section also has some GM advice on how to handle and run the game. Some of it's like pretty standard, but some of it is good to highlight. Like, if you really want to play up the horror, you gotta make sure you don't, show the PCs what they're seeing. Don't tell them what they see. Talk. Get into the sounds and the smells and focus on like the unknown. Um, this final section of the game book has a solo mode. I'm not going to really talk a whole lot about it because I don't do a lot of solo gaming. To me, RPGs are a team sport, something you do with a group of people. I know there's a trend of solo RPGing. That's great. Not my thing. But it does look like it's a good system for it for the most part, like because it uses progress clocks. It gives you some oracles to figure out like how to interpret die rolls. The one thing I don't like is that campaign setup process I just talked about. You have to do that still. Like so, you have to like create all this stuff, all for a solo game. I don't know, maybe it's your thing, maybe it's your not. I was thinking about using the campaign I'm running now to test some of the solo stuff. So my solo character will be in the same game world as my PCs. Um, and then maybe they bump into him and he's like an NPC that I was thinking about that. Um, I don't know if I have the time to do it though, but we'll see. But anyway, so yeah, there is a solo mode for this game. All right, final thoughts. Um, I like the challenge lists. Initially I was questioning it, skeptical, but I think it's a good way to run a lot of these games that Free League runs. And as I mentioned before, we kind of already do that as game masters when we're coming up with plot hooks and adventure hooks and things like that. Um, and this game kind of breaks it down with like the issue challenge um, relationship. Um, so I like that. I it would I think it would have been nice to see that earlier in other Free League games, just sort of like laid out. Like this is how you could set up a scene, Where before it was really general, like you're gonna set up a scene by having a protagonist do this thing and the antagonist is doing this other thing, and it's like, okay, all right, I'm not a you know playwright, I'm not a author, you know this kind of helps, I think. I really like that the zombies are an environmental threat. Um, while talking about this game with my buddies, I ended up comparing it to Whitechester by Post Postmortem Studios, Grim Jim. Anyway, which is a really cool book, by the way. It's a city filled with zombies. It's like a prison city. Um, so if you've done bad things, they send you there, and if you and then you probably get eaten by a zombie or something. But that's more of a D&D game, right? It's OSR retroclone game. So every time you fight a zombie, it's going to be like, I rolled a hit, I do this damage, this, that, and the other thing. Um, I can see that turning into a slog, right? I think using zombies as an environmental threat is kind of innovative, and I think it's interesting. And given the way some of the player-facing techniques used to dealing with this environmental threat, vis-a-vis the players pick what skill they're going to use to address the zombies, and then if they fail, there's this chart you roll on to see if they get bit. I think that is just adds a lot of tension to the game, um, and really translates that fear into the real world when the players start rolling their dice. Very similar to the stress mechanic and the panic mechanic in Alien RPG. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen a player pick up all these dice and start, they're shaking the dice, getting ready to roll, and there's a look of concern on their face because they have like three panic dice in there. You know, um, that really, to me, is how you can help get horror to sort of translate into the real world versus sort of like, I pick on Call of Cthulhu a lot. I don't mean to because it is a fun game, but it's like, oh, you're scared by these things. Like, oh, okay, I guess I'm gonna lose a few sanity points and pretend I'm scared. Here I'm like shaking some dice. I'm like, oh man, if I fail this roll, my character's dead. That's where like the fantasy and the reality kind of like merge, and I think it's really cool. And I think this has done a really nice job, innovatively speaking, for dealing with zombies. I really like the fact that this is a hex crawl. I really like it needs to be. It's post-apocalyptic survival horror. I mean, you're going to be moving about, so I really love the fact that they zeroed in on this. It would have been nice to have better procedures, though, something more like you would see in Forbidden Lands, which kind of goes like quarter day by quarter day. What are you doing? Make these rolls, see what happens. Um, but again, this game is trying to emulate the show and not a survival horror hex crawl. So I think they were trying to, blend the two. Kind of fell short a little bit in my mind. Um, Same thing with dealing with your supplies like ammo, food, medicine. I would have loved to have seen something more than just the game master could just say, "Oh, it's an issue. It's a challenge. You're out." I mean, I know some players of mine who would get mad at me, like, "What do you mean I'm out of ammo? I just narrated that I got a new clip." I'm like, "Well, I could do it. Too bad." you know, that's not a satisfying to me. It's not a satisfying answer. And the Forbidden Lands uses resource dice. I don't know if you're familiar with those are, but basically it might say you have D10 arrows. Okay, so every time after when you're done with a fight, you roll your resource die, a D10. Okay, if you roll a 1, that means you've used enough arrows such that you're now down to D8. Okay, and then you have another fight, and then you roll another one. Now you're down to D6, and eventually, when you get down to D4 and roll a 1, you're out of arrows. Why did they do something like this here? I don't know. I think it could easily fit, and you avoid the arbitrariness of Game Master fiat, because you can just say, "Hey, dude, you rolled a 1. You're out of food. The haven's out of food. You guys got to go do something about this." I already talked about the granular hex crawl procedure, but yeah, and I think the splitting of brawl and duels is okay. It took me a second to kind of realize what they were doing, um, and I guess I just come down to, if you're looking for survival horror, post-apocalyptic survival horror, this game might not really meet your needs. I do like the game mechanics though, and I think you might need to do some experimentation. I think I mentioned in a prior video, like the havens, like are just so underdeveloped. But I think borrowing from Mutineer Zero and their arc rules, you could actually make the Haven a really cool thing and an aspect of your campaign. I haven't read those rules yet, so don't quote me on that. That's just my hypothesis at this point. Uh, but there's other free league. I guess my point is there's other free league games that you can borrow from that sort of plug and play into this. Um, oh, my book's on the other side of the room. Yeah, I think this book could have been thicker. I think this book could have had more in it. So if you are a huge fan of The Walking Dead, by all means, pick up the book and have some fun. If you're looking for survival horror, I would recommend joining a game before considering buying this book, because you may be disappointed, and I hate for you to waste your money. And I really feel bad saying this about a Free League game, because I really like Free League. I think they do everything up until this book I've like enjoyed reading, and I look forward to playing someday. Right? This book I was like, I want to go back to the box set, the starter set. I didn't really give enough info on that. I don't think you should buy it unless you are a fan of the show and you just want to have everything. The box set has a pamphlet that's got like the truncated set of rules in it. The hardcover book isn't very thick, so I don't know. why you would need that. It's a nice table reference copy, I guess, right? Um, it's got maps, it's got an adventure in it, it's got some stats for a few of the characters, but not all of them. To me, I would have put them all in there, I guess. You can get some dice, and it has like a little cardboard counter for threat level or size level, or no, threat level for the zombies. I mean, that's it's kind of gimmicky, you know. Again, if that's your thing, go ahead and buy it, but I don't think it's worth it at all. So, well, I guess that's it for the Free Leagues Walking Dead Universe RPG. Um, I'll probably give a couple updates here and there on my blog about my campaign and how that ends up turning out, and I'll be experimenting with rules to plug in, and I'll let you know how that turns out as well. So, um, but anyway, that's it, everyone, and thanks again for all the support. I really do appreciate it, and there'll be a few more review videos, Lamentations, and then I'm going to start getting into um, my how and why I did what I've done. Did what I did. It's still early. I need more coffee. Um, with my Lamentations of Elemental Evil campaign and my gaming philosophy, and what I mean by Nacho SR. So, all right. Until next time, dear viewers, I'll catch you around.